Veteran of one of the most acclaimed voluntary forces in World War II.
For decades, none of us knew about the top secret unit sent in just days later.
The world has 196 countries, and 171 of them maintain armies. While most are standard military forces, some armies stand out for being unusual, unexpected, or downright bizarre. From criminal units turned combat heroes to armies with unconventional uniforms or tactics, these forces defy traditional military norms. Whether they're historic oddities or modern-day curiosities, these unique armies will leave you amazed. Get ready to explore 10 armies you won't believe actually exist. Number 10. Merrill's Marauders. Merrill's Marauders were one of the toughest and most daring military units of World War II. Officially designated as the 5307th Composite Unit, Provisional, their mission was to push deep into Japanese-occupied Burma, now Myanmar, and disrupt enemy operations. This wasn't your standard group of soldiers. These men were volunteers, and their mission was one of the most dangerous of the entire war. They weren't just fighting the enemy, they were also battling the unforgiving terrain, disease, and exhaustion. The unit was led by Brigadier General Frank Merrill, from whom they got their nickname. Their mission involved trekking through nearly 1,000 miles of dense jungle to attack Japanese forces, destroy supply lines, and capture key strategic points like the Myitkyina airfield. This airfield was crucial for the Allied forces to maintain supply lines to China. What made their mission even more challenging was the jungle itself, filled with venomous snakes, leeches, and insects spreading diseases like malaria and dysentery. The heavy rains and thick mud didn't help either. These men didn't just need military skills, they needed to survive nature's worst. The Marauders were divided into 6 combat teams, each with its own color designation: red, white, blue, green, orange, and khaki. Each team carried their own supplies, including food, weapons, and medical gear. The unit had no tanks, trucks, or heavy artillery. Everything they needed was carried on their backs or by mules. Their food was mostly canned goods and K-rations, and it was rarely enough to keep them energized for the grueling missions. Despite these hardships, they pushed forward relentlessly. The Marauders' most famous achievement was the capture of the Myitkyina airfield in May 1944. This victory came at a tremendous cost. Out of the original 2,750 men, only about 200 were still fit for duty by the end of the operation. The rest were either killed, wounded, or incapacitated by illness. Still, their efforts were critical in the Allied campaign to push back the Japanese in Southeast Asia. Merrill's Marauders weren't just soldiers, they were legends. Their story is one of extraordinary courage and endurance in the face of impossible odds. These men proved that determination, teamwork, and grit could overcome even the most daunting challenges. Their legacy continues to inspire military units around the world. Number 9. The Scallywags. The Scallywags were one of the most unconventional and secretive groups of World War II. Officially, they didn't exist. They weren't part of the British Army, and they didn't follow normal military rules. But they played a very real and important role in Britain's defense during the war. These were regular men, volunteers from across the country, who stayed behind to protect Britain from a potential Nazi invasion. They weren't your typical soldiers. By day, they were gamekeepers, handymen, dentists, and other ordinary professionals. By night, they became a shadowy group of defenders with a mission to fight for their homeland at any cost. The Scallywags were part of the Auxiliary Units, a secret organization set up during the early years of the war. Their job was to prepare for the worst-case scenario, a German invasion of Britain. These men were trained in guerrilla warfare, sabotage, and covert operations. If the Nazis had ever landed on British soil, the scallywags were ready to strike from the shadows, disrupting enemy movements and creating chaos behind enemy lines. They were trained to use explosives, set booby traps, and hide in underground bunkers, often located in remote areas. These bunkers, known as operational bases, were hidden so well that many were only discovered decades after the war ended. One of the most fascinating aspects of the scallywags was how secretive they were. Even the local police were often kept in the dark about their activities. If a police officer ever questioned them, they would hand over a piece of paper with instructions to call a specific phone number. When the officer called, someone on the other end would explain the situation and make it clear that the scallywags were working for the country's defense. This level of secrecy made them almost like real-life superheroes with double lives, ordinary citizens by day and clandestine warriors by night. The scallywags were never officially acknowledged during the war, and their existence remained classified for many years. These men were prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice for their country, even though they were never formally recognized as soldiers. Their bravery and dedication to protecting Britain in its darkest hour cemented their legacy as some of the most unsung heroes of World War II. Number 8. Ghost Army. The Ghost Army wasn't your typical military unit. Instead of charging into battle with guns and tanks, this group of 100 soldiers used creativity, deception, and psychological warfare to outsmart the enemy during World War II. Officially known as the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, they were a top-secret unit of the United States Army tasked with fooling the Nazis. Their mission? To mislead and confuse enemy forces about the size, location, and movements of Allied troops. And the best part? They managed to save thousands of lives without ever firing a single bullet. What made the Ghost Army so unique was its use of art, sound, and theatrics to carry out its operations. The unit was composed of artists, designers, sound engineers, actors, and other creative individuals recruited from places like art schools and ad agencies. These men weren't trained warriors. They were skilled in deception. One of their most famous tactics was using inflatable tanks, trucks, and artillery. These life-sized, blow-up replicas were set up to mimic real military equipment. From the air or a distance, they looked like an imposing army ready for battle. Sound was another powerful weapon in the Ghost Army's arsenal. They created portable sound systems that blasted recordings of troop movements, vehicles, and artillery noises. These sounds were carefully engineered to be heard from miles away, tricking the enemy into believing a large force was advancing when in reality there was no one there. They also used fake radio transmissions to send misleading messages, further confusing the Nazis about Allied plans and troop locations. One of the most daring techniques employed by the Ghost Army involved members dressing up as high-ranking officers and visiting local towns. They would deliberately drop hints about troop movements or plans, knowing enemy spies might overhear and report the false information back to their commanders. Every move was calculated to mislead the enemy without putting the Ghost Army itself in direct danger. The Ghost Army's efforts were highly effective. It's estimated that their deception saved over 30,000 to 40,000 Allied lives during the war. Their work was so secretive that it wasn't fully acknowledged until decades later. Today, the Ghost Army is remembered as one of the most ingenious units in military history, proving that creativity and cunning can be just as powerful as brute force in warfare. Number 7. Jesse Scouts. The Jesse Scouts were one of the most daring and fearless groups to emerge during the American Civil War. These men weren't just ordinary soldiers. They were the Union Army's secret weapon for gathering intelligence and sabotaging the Confederate forces. Operating as undercover operatives, the Jesse Scouts were pioneers of military espionage, and their missions were as dangerous as they were crucial to the Union's success. Named after their leader, Major Henry Young, the Jesse Scouts were a small group of highly skilled soldiers who specialized in infiltrating enemy lines. What made them so unique was their ability to blend in with Confederate troops. To do this, they often wore stolen or fabricated Confederate uniforms, which allowed them to move freely and gather intelligence without raising suspicion. However, this tactic was incredibly risky. If they were caught in enemy uniforms, they would be executed on the spot as spies, a fate that many of them tragically met. The Jesse Scouts didn't just gather intelligence, they also played a direct role in disrupting Confederate operations. They intercepted enemy communications, sabotaged supply lines, and even captured Confederate officers to extract valuable information. One of their most famous operations involved Captain Charles Carpenter, a particularly bold member of the unit. Carpenter once disguised himself as a Confederate soldier and infiltrated enemy lines to gather intelligence. In another instance, he dressed as a woman to seduce a Confederate officer and obtain critical information. These missions highlight the Scouts' creativity and willingness to take extreme risks to accomplish their goals. Despite their successes, the Jesse Scouts operated in relative obscurity. Because of the secretive nature of their work, their contributions often went unrecognized. They worked in small, tight-knit groups, relying on each other for trust and survival. Their missions were so secretive that even many Union soldiers didn't know they existed. This secrecy was essential for their safety and effectiveness, but it also meant that their bravery often went unnoticed and uncelebrated. The Jesse Scouts were trailblazers in the world of military espionage, paving the way for modern intelligence operations. Their courage and ingenuity played a critical role in the Union's victory during the Civil War. Today, their story remains a testament to the power of intelligence, strategy, and the extraordinary risks that some are willing to take to protect their cause. Number 6. Hot Army. Russia's so-called Hot Army is perhaps one of the most controversial and unusual military phenomena in modern times. While the Russian military is one of the largest in the world, with over 2 million active personnel, what sets this apart is the significant number of women who serve, more than 200,000, making it one of the largest female presences in any armed force globally. However, it's not just the numbers that make it stand out. This branch of Russia's military has gained notoriety for its heavily objectified portrayal of women soldiers, which has earned it nicknames like Putin's miniskirt army. One of the most striking features of this unit is the uniforms. Female soldiers are often required to wear tight-fitting skirts or dresses, which are a stark contrast to the typical rugged and practical uniforms worn by their male counterparts. Even in Russia's Air Force, women soldiers don form-fitting, one-piece green suits that leave no room for practicality in combat situations. These uniforms are often showcased during parades, ceremonies, and public military events, where the women are expected to look polished and always smile, a stark departure from the stoic image of soldiers we usually imagine. Critics have called this approach sexist, arguing that it reduces women in the military to mere symbols of beauty rather than acknowledging their abilities as soldiers. Many of these women are not placed in key combat roles, but are instead relegated to ceremonial duties or public-facing positions. This has sparked debates about gender equality in the Russian military, with some arguing that the uniforms and roles reinforce harmful stereotypes rather than empowering women in defense roles. However, it's important to note that these women are still trained soldiers. While they may not see as much combat as their male counterparts, they are disciplined, trained in military tactics, and can certainly defend themselves if needed. The issue lies more in the way they are presented to the public, which prioritizes aesthetics over functionality. While some might view Russia's hot army as a curious or even glamorous part of their military, it highlights deeper conversations about gender roles and the treatment of women in armed forces worldwide. Whether it's an intentional propaganda tool or just an outdated tradition, this aspect of Russia's military continues to spark debate and fascination in equal measure. But one thing is clear: these women, regardless of their uniforms, deserve recognition for their service. Number 5. Mormon Battalion. The Mormon Battalion was a unique military unit formed during the Mexican-American War, 1846 to 1848. Organized in 1846, it was made up entirely of Mormon volunteers and is remembered as the only religiously based unit in U.S. military history. Despite being relatively small, with around 500 men, the battalion left a significant legacy, particularly in the western United States. Their story is one of faith, endurance, and the pursuit of a better future during a difficult time in American history. The battalion was formed at the request of the U.S. government after Mormon leaders, including Brigham Young, struck a deal with military officials. At the time, the Mormon community was in a precarious position. They were fleeing religious persecution in Illinois and planning to migrate west to establish a new home in the Utah Territory. By agreeing to supply troops for the war effort, they hoped to gain financial support and goodwill from the government to assist them in their westward journey. The Mormon Battalion's mission was to march over 2,000 miles from Council Bluffs, Iowa, to San Diego, California. This was one of the longest infantry marches in U.S. military history, and it was grueling. The soldiers faced extreme heat, lack of water, and rugged terrain as they crossed the Great Plains, deserts, and mountains. Along the way, they endured hunger, illness, and exhaustion. Yet remarkably, they never engaged in combat. Their primary tasks involved building infrastructure, such as roads and forts, and helping to secure California as U.S. territory. What set the Mormon Battalion apart wasn't just their mission, but also their diversity. The unit included men as young as 12 and as old as 60. Women and children also accompanied the group, serving as cooks, laundresses, and caregivers. This was highly unusual at the time, as most armies didn't allow women and families to join military expeditions. The inclusion of women and children gave the battalion a unique sense of community and resilience, even in the face of hardship. The Mormon Battalion's journey ultimately helped pave the way for westward expansion. They contributed to the development of key infrastructure in California and played a role in the settlement of the region. Today, their story is celebrated as part of Mormon history, an American pioneer heritage. Their determination, faith, and willingness to endure hardship for a greater cause make the Mormon Battalion a fascinating and inspiring chapter in U.S. military history. Number 4. A force. A force was one of the most secretive and ingenious units of World War II. Known for its ability to outsmart the Nazis through deception and covert operations. This British intelligence group operated outside traditional military structures, making it an unofficial yet highly effective unit. Created by British spy master Dudley Clarke, a force became famous for its innovative tactics, such as spreading false information, staging fake troop movements, and orchestrating complex deceptions that left the enemy confused and vulnerable. One of a force's most celebrated operations was Operation Treatment, a brilliant ploy designed to mislead the German military. The goal was to convince the Nazis that Allied troops from the Middle East would arrive at a key location 2 weeks later than planned. By creating this false timeline, a force ensured that German forces were unprepared when the actual attack took place. This deception contributed to a major Allied victory, proving the immense value of psychological warfare. What made a force so effective was its reliance on elaborate trickery. The unit specialized in disseminating fake intelligence through multiple channels. They used fake radio transmissions, forged documents, and even planted misleading rumors in local communities where Nazi spies might overhear them. A force went to great lengths to make their lies believable, often creating entire fake units, complete with uniforms, insignias, and fabricated backstories. This kind of deception required incredible attention to detail and coordination across various Allied intelligence services. A force's methods were unconventional, and so were the people who worked within it. Unlike traditional military units, a force recruited individuals with unique skill sets, including actors, writers, and artists who were skilled at creating convincing illusions. It was a team of creative minds working together to solve complex problems through deception. Their work often involved crafting fake plans and scenarios that were so convincing, even Allied commanders sometimes mistook them for real operations. The impact of a force went far beyond individual missions. Their success proved that war wasn't just about brute force, it was also about strategy and creativity. By misleading the enemy and forcing them to make costly mistakes, a force helped the Allies gain critical advantages on the battlefield. Although their operations remained classified for many years, a force is now recognized as one of the most innovative units in military history. Their ability to deceive and disorient the enemy played a vital role in shaping the outcome of World War II. Dudley Clarke and his team demonstrated that intelligence, cunning, and ingenuity could be just as powerful as tanks and bombs in the fight against tyranny. Number 3, the Filthy 13. The Filthy 13 was one of the most infamous and unconventional units of the United States Army during World War II. Officially, they were the 1st Demolition Section of the Regimental Headquarters Company, 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment, 101st Airborne Division. However, their rebellious behavior, unique traditions, and fearless combat tactics earned them a reputation that went far beyond their official designation. They became the inspiration for the 1967 movie The Dirty Dozen, though their real story is even more fascinating. The Filthy 13 got their nickname from their notoriously poor hygiene and unruly behavior. Unlike other soldiers, they refused to bathe regularly or follow standard grooming practices, which made them stand out among their peers. They also had a tradition of shaving their heads into mohawks and painting their faces with Native American-style war paint before going into battle. This was inspired by their leader, Jake McNeice, who was part Choctaw and used these rituals to boost morale and intimidate the enemy. Their wild appearance and behavior made them seem more like outlaws than soldiers, but their effectiveness in combat was undeniable. The unit's primary mission was demolition. They were trained to destroy bridges, railroads, and other critical infrastructure behind enemy lines to disrupt German operations. Their most famous operation was during the D-Day invasion of Normandy on June 6, 1944. The Filthy 13 parachuted into France as part of the Allied effort to liberate Europe from Nazi control. Their task was to destroy bridges over the Douve River to prevent German reinforcements from reaching the beaches. Despite being heavily outnumbered and facing intense enemy fire, they successfully completed their mission, playing a crucial role in the success of the invasion. What set the Filthy 13 apart wasn't just their combat skills, but also their rebellious spirit. They were known for breaking rules, stealing supplies, and getting into trouble during downtime. However, their commanders often turned a blind eye to their antics because of their exceptional performance in the field. They were fearless, resourceful, and willing to take on the most dangerous missions, earning the respect of their fellow soldiers despite their unorthodox behavior. Number 2. Lovat Scouts. The Lovat Scouts were an extraordinary unit of the British Army, known for their expertise in reconnaissance and marksmanship. Originally formed during the Second Boer War in South Africa, 1899 to 1902, this unit was created by Simon Fraser, the 14th Lord Lovat, who recruited skilled outdoorsmen from the Scottish Highlands. These men were primarily ghillies, gamekeepers and hunters, who had an intimate understanding of the terrain, making them perfectly suited for scouting and sniping operations. The Lovat Scouts would go on to become one of the most innovative and respected units of their time, pioneering techniques that influenced modern military practices. During the Boer War, their role was to serve as mounted infantry, conducting reconnaissance missions and engaging in skirmishes with the Boer forces. They earned a reputation for their ability to navigate rugged terrain and track enemy movements, often operating far ahead of the main army. Their sharp shooting skills were unmatched, and their training in stalking prey as hunters translated seamlessly into their military duties. While other units struggled to adapt to the harsh environment of South Africa, the Lovat Scouts thrived, using their knowledge of the land to outsmart the enemy. After the Boer War, the Lovat Scouts continued to serve, but their most significant contributions came during World War I and World War II. They were officially recognized as the British Army's first sniper unit in 1916, and their expertise in camouflage and long-range shooting set them apart. During World War I, they trained soldiers in the art of concealment and precision shooting, skills that were critical in the trench warfare of the Western Front. The Lovat Scouts were also instrumental in developing camouflage techniques, using natural materials to blend into their surroundings. Their innovations laid the groundwork for modern sniper and reconnaissance units. In World War II, the Lovat Scouts once again proved their worth. They were involved in operations across Europe, including the D-Day landings and missions in Italy and Greece. Their ability to operate independently in hostile territory made them invaluable for gathering intelligence and taking out high-value targets. By this time, they had become known as one of the most elite reconnaissance units in the British Army. The Lovat Scouts' legacy is still felt today. Their contributions to sniping, reconnaissance, and camouflage have influenced military tactics worldwide. Known for their discipline, resourcefulness, and unparalleled skill in the field, the Lovat Scouts remain a symbol of innovation and excellence in military history. Their story is a testament to how traditional skills like hunting and tracking can be adapted to meet the demands of modern warfare. Number 1. 61st Cavalry Regiment. The 61st Cavalry Regiment is a unique and fascinating unit within the Indian Army. It is the largest and only operational horse-mounted cavalry regiment in the world today, making it a living relic of a bygone era. While modern warfare has largely replaced horses with tanks, aircraft, and advanced technology, the 61st Cavalry Regiment continues to uphold the traditions and skills of cavalry warfare while also adapting to modern needs. Formed in 1953 by merging several princely state cavalry units, the regiment was established to preserve the legacy of India's historic cavalry forces. Its members are highly skilled horsemen, trained in traditional cavalry tactics as well as ceremonial duties. The regiment's horses are carefully selected for their speed, agility, and endurance, and they undergo rigorous training to prepare for both ceremonial and operational roles. The soldiers themselves are trained in a variety of equestrian skills, including mounted combat techniques, formation riding, and even tent pegging, a sport that originated as a cavalry exercise. While the 61st Cavalry Regiment has ceremonial responsibilities, such as participating in Republic Day parades and state functions, it is not limited to pageantry. In times of need, the regiment has demonstrated its operational capabilities. During the 1971 Indo-Pak War, members of the regiment were deployed in active combat roles. Additionally, the unit contributes to disaster relief and peacekeeping efforts, showcasing its versatility beyond traditional cavalry duties. What makes the 61st Cavalry Regiment particularly remarkable is its ability to balance tradition with relevance. Its ceremonial roles preserve India's military heritage, while its operational contributions prove that even in an age of advanced technology, there is still value in the discipline, precision, and adaptability of a cavalry unit. The regiment stands as a symbol of India's rich military history, blending the skills of the past with the demands of the present. Thanks for watching another episode. While you are still here, make sure to click the video on your screen for more quality content.